The rain hit Sarah's kitchen window like tiny stones. She looked outside and saw the trees bending in the wind. The storm had been going for 2 hours now, and it was getting worse. Sarah Martinez lived alone on her small ranch outside the town of Millbrook. She had 12 rescue horses in her barn, and storms always made her worry about them. Sarah put on her old yellow raincoat and grabbed a flashlight. The wind tried to push her back as she walked toward the barn. Her boots splashed through puddles that had formed in the dirt. Thunder crashed overhead and lightning lit up the dark sky for a moment. She had lived on this ranch for 3 years now. After her divorce, Sarah needed a fresh start. She used her settlement money to buy the old property and started rescuing horses that nobody wanted anymore. It was hard work, but it made her feel useful again. The barn door was heavy, but Sarah managed to pull it open. Inside, her horses stood quietly in their stalls. Most of them were older horses or ones that had been hurt before. Sarah had fixed up the barn herself, painting the walls white and putting in new light bulbs. The smell of hay and horses always made her feel calm. "Easy, girl," Sarah said to Luna, a gray mare who seemed nervous about the storm. She patted the horse's neck and checked that all the stall doors were locked tight. That was when she heard it. Voices coming from above her head. Sarah stopped moving and listened carefully. The sound came from the hayloft upstairs. She was sure she had locked the barn before dinner. Who could be up there? Her heart started beating fast. Sarah lived far from town, and her nearest neighbor was 2 miles away. She thought about going back to the house to call the police, but the voices sounded quiet and scared. Not dangerous. Sarah found the old wooden ladder that led to the hayloft. She climbed up slowly, trying not to make noise. The ladder creaked under her feet. When she got to the top, she pointed her flashlight into the dark space. "Don't move," she called out, trying to sound brave. A man's voice answered from the shadows. "Please, we're not here to hurt anyone. We just needed somewhere dry." Sarah moved her flashlight toward the voice. In the circle of light, she saw a man sitting on a pile of hay. He looked to be in his 30s with dark hair and a thick mustache. His shirt was torn and she could see blood on his shoulder. Next to him sat a little girl, maybe 6 years old, with long brown hair. The child was pressing close to the man's side. "Who are you?" Sarah asked. She kept the flashlight on them but stepped closer. "My name is Jake," the man said. His voice was tired and rough. "This is my daughter, Emma. Our truck broke down about a mile from here. When the storm started, we saw your barn and—" He stopped talking and looked down at the little girl. Emma had big brown eyes that looked scared. She wore a pink jacket that was too big for her, and her hair was wet from the rain. She didn't say anything, but she watched Sarah carefully. "You're bleeding," Sarah said, looking at Jake's shoulder. "It's not too bad," Jake replied, but Sarah could see him wince when he moved. "How long have you been up here?" "About an hour. We waited for the storm to pass, but it just kept getting worse. I'm sorry for breaking into your barn. We'll leave as soon as the rain stops." Sarah looked at Emma again. The little girl was shivering, and her lips looked blue from the cold. Sarah had always been soft-hearted, especially when it came to children and animals. Her ex-husband used to say she cared too much about strays. "Come down from there," Sarah said finally. "Both of you, you need to get warm and dry." Jake looked surprised. "Ma'am, we don't want to cause you any trouble." "You'll cause more trouble if you freeze to death in my barn," Sarah said. "Come on, I've got a first aid kit in the house." Jake stood up slowly, holding his hurt shoulder. He helped Emma to her feet. "Can you climb down the ladder, sweetheart?" He asked her gently. Emma nodded but looked nervous about the ladder. Sarah went down first, then waited at the bottom to help. Jake came down last, moving carefully because of his injury. In the barn's light, Sarah could see them better. Jake wore old jeans and cowboy boots that had seen a lot of use. His hands were rough and calloused like someone who worked outside. Emma's clothes were clean but simple, jeans and a t-shirt under the big pink jacket. "Where did you folks come from?" Sarah asked as they walked toward the house. "We've been traveling," Jake said he didn't give more details. Sarah's farmhouse was small but warm. She had painted the kitchen yellow and hung curtains with tiny flowers on them. Emma's eyes got wide when she saw the cozy room. "Sit down at the table," Sarah told them. She brought towels from the bathroom. "You're both soaked through." Emma sat quietly while her father dried her hair with a towel. Sarah could see the little girl looking around the kitchen, taking in everything: the cookie jar shaped like a pig, the photos of horses on the refrigerator, and the small vase of wildflowers on the windowsill. "Let me look at that shoulder," Sarah said to Jake. He pulled off his torn shirt carefully. The cut wasn't deep, but it was long and still bleeding a little. Sarah cleaned it with antiseptic from her first aid kit. Jake didn't complain, even though she knew it must hurt. "How did this happen?" she asked. Jake was quiet for a moment. "Something hit our truck window. Glass cut me when I was getting Emma." "Ow!" Sarah wondered what had hit their window, but Jake's tone told her not to ask more questions. She put a bandage over the cut and gave him a clean t-shirt that had belonged to her ex-husband. "Are you hungry?" Sarah asked Emma. The little girl nodded shyly. Sarah made grilled cheese sandwiches and heated up some tomato soup. She watched Emma eat carefully, like she was trying not to make a mess. The little girl had good manners. "This is really good," Emma said quietly. It was the first time she had spoken. "Thank you, sweetheart," Sarah said with a smile. "Would you like some milk?" While Emma ate, Sarah studied Jake. He had kind eyes, but she could see he was worried about something. He kept looking at Emma to make sure she was okay. Sarah had always been good at reading people, and Jake seemed like a man who was running from something. "Where are you headed?" Sarah asked. "We're still deciding," Jake said. "We just need to find the right place to settle down." "Well, you can't go anywhere tonight," Sarah said. "This storm isn't stopping anytime soon. I've got a guest room upstairs. You can stay until morning." Jake looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, you've already done too much. We're strangers to you." "My name is Sarah, not ma'am." "And sometimes strangers need help." She looked at Emma, who had fallen asleep in her chair. "Besides, this little one needs a warm bed." Jake looked at his sleeping daughter and sighed. "Just for tonight, then." "And thank you, Sarah. We'll pay you back somehow." Sarah carried Emma upstairs to the guest room. The little girl barely woke up as Sarah tucked her into bed. Jake stood in the doorway, watching. "She's a beautiful child," Sarah whispered. "She's everything to me," Jake said softly. Sarah showed Jake where to find extra blankets and towels. As she said goodnight, she noticed him looking out the window toward the road, like he was watching for something. Back in her own room, Sarah lay awake listening to the storm. She wondered what had brought Jake and Emma to her barn on this wild night. Something told her their story was more complicated than a simple truck breakdown. But as she finally fell asleep, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Her empty house felt less lonely with other people in it. Sarah woke up to sunshine coming through her bedroom window. The storm had passed during the night, leaving the air clean and fresh. She could hear voices in the kitchen downstairs. For a moment, she forgot about her unexpected guests. She put on her robe and went downstairs. Jake was standing at the stove, cooking eggs. Emma sat at the table, already dressed and eating a piece of toast. The little girl had brushed her hair and looked much better than she had the night before. "Good morning," Jake said with a smile. "I hope you don't mind." Emma was hungry, and I wanted to make breakfast to thank you for your kindness. "You didn't have to do that," Sarah said, but she was touched by the gesture. It had been a long time since anyone had cooked breakfast in her kitchen. "Daddy makes the best scrambled eggs," Emma said proudly. Sarah sat down at the table and accepted a plate of eggs and toast. They were indeed very good. Jake poured her a cup of coffee from the pot he had made. "How's your shoulder feeling?" Sarah asked. "Much better, thanks to you," Jake replied. He moved his arm to show her. The bleeding stopped completely. After breakfast, Jake insisted on cleaning the dishes while Sarah got dressed. When she came back downstairs, she found Emma looking out the window at the horses in the pasture. "Can I pet them?" Emma asked hopefully. "Maybe later," Sarah said. Some of my horses are still learning to trust people. We have to be very careful. Were they hurt before they came here? Emma asked. Sarah was surprised by how smart the question was. Yes, some of them were. That's why I take care of them now. They need someone who understands. Emma nodded seriously, like she understood exactly what Sarah meant. Jake joined them by the window. You have a beautiful place here, Sarah. How long have you been raising horses? About 3 years. I started the rescue after my divorce. These horses needed a home, and I needed a purpose. Sarah wasn't usually so open with strangers, but something about Jake made her feel comfortable. It must be a lot of work, Jake said. It is, but I love it. Each horse has its own personality. Some are playful, some are shy, some are stubborn. Sarah pointed to a brown horse standing near the fence. That's Charlie. He was so scared when he first came here that he wouldn't let anyone near him. Now he follows me around like a puppy. How many horses do you have? Emma asked. 12, right. Now, I wish I could take in more, but I can only handle so many by myself. Jake looked thoughtful. What kind of work needs to be done around here? Sarah laughed. Everything. The fence by the south pasture is broken. The hayloft needs to be reorganized. 3 of the stall doors don't close properly. The water system needs repair. I could make a list 10 pages long. I'm good with my hands, Jake said quietly. Maybe I could help fix a few things before we leave. To pay you back for last night. Sarah studied his face. You don't have to do that. I want to. Emma and I aren't in any hurry to get on the road. Something in his voice made Sarah curious, but she didn't push. Well, if you're sure, I could use the help. They spent the morning working together. Jake proved to be very handy with tools. He fixed 2 of the broken stall doors in less than an hour. Sarah was impressed by how quickly he figured out what was wrong and how to repair it. Emma helped by sorting through old brushes and horse equipment. She was careful with everything and asked lots of questions about how to take care of horses. Sarah found herself enjoying the little girl's company. My mama used to have a horse when she was little, Emma told Sarah while they cleaned brushes. Daddy showed me pictures. What was your mama like? Sarah asked gently. Emma's face got sad. She was really pretty and nice. She died when I was 4. I still miss her a lot. Sarah felt her heart break for this sweet child. I'm sure she was wonderful. And I bet she would be very proud of what a good helper you are. Daddy says she's watching over us from heaven, Emma said. Do you think that's true? I think people who love us never really leave us, Sarah said carefully. They stay in our hearts forever. At lunchtime, Sarah made sandwiches for all 3 of them. They sat on the porch and ate while watching the horses graze in the pasture. This is the prettiest place I've ever seen, Emma said. It's so quiet and peaceful. It is nice, Jake agreed. Very different from... He stopped himself from finishing the sentence. Different from where? Sarah asked. Jake looked uncomfortable. Just different from places we've lived before. Sarah noticed that Jake often stopped himself from saying too much. She was getting more curious about their background, but she didn't want to make them feel uncomfortable after lunch. Jake worked on fixing the broken fence while Sarah and Emma groomed one of the gentler horses. Emma was a natural with animals. She spoke to the horse in a soft, calm voice and wasn't afraid when the big animal nuzzled her hand. You're very good at this, Sarah told her. I like animals better than people sometimes, Emma said honestly. They don't ask too many questions. Sarah wondered what kind of questions Emma had been dealing with. The little girl seemed older than her 6 years in some ways. That evening, Sarah cooked dinner for all of them. Jake insisted on helping, and Sarah discovered he was a good cook. He made a salad while she prepared chicken and rice. Where did you learn to cook? Sarah asked. My wife taught me, Jake said. She said a man should know how to take care of his family. His voice got quiet when he mentioned his wife. She sounds like a smart woman. She was. Maria was the strongest person I ever knew. When she got sick, she fought harder than anyone thought possible. She did it for Emma. Sarah could hear the love and sadness in Jake's voice. She understood. Now, why he seemed so protective of his daughter. After dinner, they sat on the porch again. Emma played with a barn cat that had wandered up to the house. The cat, usually shy with strangers, seemed to like the little girl right away. "That's Whiskers," Sarah told Emma. "She's the mother of all the barn cats. She's usually very careful around new people." "Animals know when someone has a good heart," Jake said, watching his daughter pet the cat. "Is that why you're so good with the horses?" Sarah asked Jake. He smiled. "I grew up on a ranch in Texas. My grandfather taught me that animals can sense your feelings. If you're calm and kind, they'll trust you." "What made you leave Texas?" Sarah asked. Jake's smile faded. "Sometimes life takes you in directions you don't expect." Sarah was learning that Jake had many secrets. Every time she asked about his past, he gave answers that didn't really answer anything. But she could see he was a good father and a hard worker. That seemed more important than whatever he was hiding. That night, as Sarah was getting ready for bed, she heard Jake and Emma talking quietly in the guest room. "I like it here, Daddy," Emma was saying. "Sarah is nice, and the horses are beautiful. Can we stay a little longer?" "We can't stay too long, sweetheart," Jake replied gently. "Sarah has her own life. We can't keep bothering her. But she seems lonely, like us. Maybe we could help each other." Sarah felt tears come to her eyes. This little girl was wise beyond her years. Emma was right. Sarah had been lonely. Having Jake and Emma in her house made her realize how much she missed having a family around. Over the next few days, Jake fixed more things around the ranch. He repaired the water system, organized the hayloft, and even painted the barn doors. Emma continued to help Sarah with the horses and was becoming attached to several of them. Sarah found herself looking forward to their conversations at mealtimes. Jake was intelligent and funny when he relaxed. He told stories about different places he had lived and work he had done, but he never gave specific details about locations or jobs. Emma opened up more each day. She told Sarah about books she liked to read and games she enjoyed playing. The little girl was clearly very smart and had been well educated by her father. "Do you go to school?" Sarah asked Emma one day. "Daddy teaches me at home," Emma replied. "He says regular schools don't always have what I need." Sarah wondered what Emma needed that regular schools couldn't provide. But like everything else about Jake and Emma, this seemed to be another mystery. On their 5th day at the ranch, Sarah found Jake sitting on the porch steps after Emma had gone to bed. He was staring at the road that led to town, and he looked worried. "Penny for your thoughts," Sarah said, sitting down next to him. Jake sighed. "I've been thinking we should probably move on soon. We've imposed on your kindness long enough." "You haven't been imposing, you've been helping. This ranch looks better than it has since I bought it." "That's kind of you to say, but Emma and we have some complicated circumstances. I don't want to bring any trouble to your doorstep." "What kind of trouble?" Sarah asked. Jake was quiet for a long moment. "The kind that follows you no matter how far you run?" Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cool evening air. Wherever Jake was running from sounded serious. But looking at this kind man who had spent his days helping her and caring for his daughter, Sarah couldn't imagine him being involved in anything truly bad. "Maybe running isn't the answer," she said softly. "Sometimes it's the only answer," Jake replied. 2 weeks had passed since that stormy night when Sarah found Jake and Emma in her barn. They had settled into a comfortable routine at the ranch. Jake worked on repairs during the day while Emma helped Sarah with the horses. In the evenings, they cooked dinner together and sat on the porch talking. Sarah had grown very attached to both of them. Emma was like the daughter she had never had, and Jake. Well, Jake made her feel things she hadn't felt since before her marriage fell apart. She tried not to think too much about it. After all, Jake had made it clear they would be moving on eventually. On Tuesday morning, Sarah needed to drive into town to buy feed for the horses and pick up supplies from the hardware store. Jake offered to come with her, but Sarah said she could manage alone. She enjoyed the quiet drive, and besides, someone needed to stay with Emma. "I'll have lunch ready when you get back," Jake called as she drove away. The trip to Millbrook usually took about 30 minutes. It was a small town with one main street lined with old shops and cafes. Sarah had lived near the town for 3 years, but she still felt like an outsider. Most of the people had lived there their whole lives and knew each other's families going back generations. Sarah parked her truck outside Murphy's feed store. As she walked toward the entrance, something caught her eye. There was a new poster in the window of the hardware store next door. She walked over to get a better look and felt her world turn upside down. The poster showed a photograph of Jake. He was wearing a suit and tie instead of work clothes, but it was definitely him. The same kind eyes, the same smile, the same thick mustache. Across the top of the poster, big letters spelled out, "Welcome Mayor Jake Thompson, building Millbrook's future together." Sarah stared at the poster in shock. Jake was going to be the mayor of Millbrook? The man who had been hiding in her barn, who claimed to be just passing through, was actually the town's new elected leader. Her hands were shaking as she read the smaller print on the poster. It said Jake would officially take office in 2 weeks. There was information about his background in local government and his plans to bring new businesses to Millbrook. Exciting, isn't it? Said a voice behind her. Sarah turned around and saw Mrs. Henderson, who owned the flower shop down the street. The older woman was known for knowing everyone's business in town. "I'm sorry," Sarah managed to say. "Our new mayor?" "Such a nice young man. He came to town about a month ago to meet with the city council and look at houses. Very impressive, I thought. He has big plans for Millbrook. Has anyone seen him lately?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice normal. "Oh, no, dear. He went back to his old town to finish up his business there. He's supposed to return next week to get ready for the swearing-in ceremony. I heard he has a little daughter, too. It will be nice to have children around City Hall again." Sarah's mind was racing. Jake had been in Millbrook a month ago looking at houses. That meant he had been planning to live here long before the night she found him in her barn. But why hadn't he told her who he was? And why was he hiding on her ranch instead of staying in town like a normal person would? She bought the horse feed without really thinking about what she was doing. Her hands were still shaking as she loaded the bags into her truck. She drove home in a daze, trying to make sense of what she had learned. When she pulled up to her house, she could see Jake working on fixing the gate to the horse pasture. Emma was sitting nearby, braiding flowers into a chain. They both looked so normal, so innocent. But now Sarah knew that Jake had been lying to her for 2 weeks. How was town? Jake called out when he saw her. Sarah didn't answer right away. She got out of the truck and walked over to where he was working. Emma ran up to show her the flower chain she had made. "Look, Sarah, I made this for you." "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Sarah said, trying to smile. But her heart was pounding. "Emma, could you go inside and wash up for lunch? I need to talk to your daddy about something." Emma skipped toward the house, happy and carefree. Sarah waited until the little girl was inside before turning to face Jake. "Is there something you want to tell me?" she asked. Jake looked confused. "What do you mean? Maybe something about who you really are?" Jake's face went pale. He set down his tools and stood up slowly. "Sarah, I can explain. Mayor Jacob Thompson," Sarah said, watching his reaction. Jake closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, he looked tired and sad. "How did you find out?" "There's a poster with your picture on it in the hardware store window. Building Millbrook's future together, it says. Were you planning to tell me, or were you just going to disappear one day?" "It's not what you think," Jake said quickly. "Then tell me what it is. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me for 2 weeks. I opened my home to you and Emma. I've been taking care of you, worrying about you, and all this time you're supposed to be the mayor of this town?" Jake ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Sarah had learned meant he was stressed. "You're right. I should have told you the truth from the beginning, but the situation is complicated." "Then explain it to me." Jake looked toward the house, to make sure Emma couldn't hear them. Then he sat down on the porch steps and motioned for Sarah to sit beside him. She remained standing, her arms crossed. "I was the mayor of a town called Cedar Falls," Jake began. about 60 miles east of here. I served for 2 years and I thought I was doing a good job. But then a corruption scandal broke out involving the previous administration. Were you involved in it? Sarah asked. No. Absolutely not. But I was part of the government and people were angry. They wanted someone to blame. The local newspaper ran stories suggesting that all the city officials must have known what was going on. Soon, people were treating me like I was guilty too. Jake's voice got quieter. At first, I thought it would blow over. The truth would come out and people would understand that I had nothing to do with the corruption, but it got worse. Emma and I started getting threatening phone calls. Someone threw a rock through our front window. People would stare at us when we went to the store. Sarah felt some of her anger fading as she saw the pain in Jake's eyes. The final straw came 3 weeks ago, Jake continued. I was loading groceries into my truck when someone threw a brick at us. That's how I got the cut on my shoulder. The brick shattered the passenger window and glass flew everywhere. Emma was in the truck. Oh my God, Sarah whispered. Was she hurt? No, thank goodness, but she was terrified. That night, I decided we had to leave Cedar Falls. I had already been offered the job here in Millbrook, contingent on a background check and references. When those came back clean, they officially offered me the position. So why didn't you just move to Millbrook like a normal person? Why were you hiding in my barn? Jake sighed deeply. I was scared, Sarah. What if the same thing happened here? What if people in Millbrook heard about the scandal and decided they didn't want me as their mayor before I even had a chance to prove myself? So you decided to what? Live in my barn forever? No, of course not. I was planning to come forward next week, before the swearing-in ceremony. I just wanted some time to think, to figure out how to handle the situation. When our truck broke down near your place during that storm, it seemed like a sign that maybe I should lay low for a few more days. Sarah stared at him. Part of her understood his reasoning, but part of her felt betrayed. So everything you told me was a lie? About traveling, about looking for a place to settle down? Not everything was a lie. We were looking for a place to settle down here in Millbrook. And everything I told you about Maria, about losing her, about wanting to take care of Emma, all of that was true. The only thing I lied about was who I am and why we're here. The only thing? Sarah's voice rose. Jake, that's not a small thing. I thought you were just a man passing through. I thought you were someone who needed help. Instead, you're supposed to be the leader of this town, and you've been hiding on my ranch like some kind of criminal. I know how it looks, Jake said. Desperately. But Sarah, these past 2 weeks have been the happiest, Emma, and I have been since Maria died. You've been so kind to us. You've made us feel like we're part of a family again. Sarah felt tears starting to form in her eyes. That's exactly the problem, Jake. I was starting to care about you. Both of you. I was thinking that maybe you might want to stay here permanently. But how can I trust anything you say now? Everything I felt, everything between us, that was real, Jake said, standing up and taking a step toward her. My feelings for you are the most honest thing in my life right now. Sarah backed away from him. How can I know that? How can I know what's real and what's just another lie? Before Jake could answer, Emma came running out of the house. Is lunch ready? I'm getting hungry. Both adults looked at the little girl and tried to compose themselves. Sarah could see that Jake was struggling with what to say. Emma, sweetheart, Jake said gently, we need to pack our things. We're going to leave this afternoon? Leave? Emma's face crumpled. But why? I thought we were happy here. Sarah's heart broke seeing the little girl's confusion and disappointment. Whatever anger she felt toward Jake, Emma was innocent in all of this. Sometimes grown-ups have complicated problems to solve, Jake explained. Sarah couldn't sleep that night. She kept thinking about Emma's tears and the look of defeat on Jake's face as they drove away. Her house felt too quiet without their voices filling the rooms. Even the horses seemed to sense something was wrong. When she went to feed them in the morning, Charlie, the brown horse who usually followed her around, stood at the far end of his stall looking sad. I know, boy, Sarah said, patting his neck. I miss them too. She tried to keep busy by doing chores around the ranch, but everywhere she looked reminded her of Jake and Emma, the stall doors Jake had fixed, the fence he had repaired, the flower garden where Emma had played with the cats. Even the kitchen felt empty without Jake making coffee in the mornings or Emma chattering about the horses during breakfast. By noon, Sarah couldn't stand it anymore. She drove into town telling herself she needed groceries. But really, she wanted to see if anyone was talking about Jake. She was curious about what people in Millbrook really thought of their new mayor. At the grocery store, Sarah overheard two women discussing Jake while they picked out vegetables. I heard he was supposed to arrive yesterday, one woman said. Betty at City Hall said he called and asked to push back his arrival by a few days. Some kind of family emergency. I hope everything's all right, the other woman replied. From what? I've heard he sounds like exactly what this town needs. Someone young and energetic with fresh ideas. Sarah felt a stab of guilt. Jake's family emergency was probably trying to figure out where he and Emma would stay now that Sarah had kicked them out. At the hardware store, Sarah stopped to look at the poster again. In the daylight, she could see more details about Jake's background. He had a college degree in public administration. He had volunteered with youth programs and had helped bring new businesses to his previous town before the scandal hit. Nothing in his record suggested he was anything but an honest, hard-working public servant. You looking forward to meeting our new mayor? Asked Mr. Peterson, the store owner. I suppose, Sarah said carefully. My cousin lives in Cedar Falls, where he came from. Says Jake Thompson is a good man who got caught up in someone else's mess. Shame what happened to him there. But their loss is our gain, I figure. Sarah felt her stomach clench. What exactly happened in Cedar Falls? Oh, the usual small-town politics gone wrong. The previous mayor and some city council members were taking kickbacks from developers. When it all came out, people were so mad they wanted to blame everyone in city government. Jake wasn't involved at all, but he got lumped in with the guilty parties. My cousin said it got pretty ugly. People calling for his resignation, protesters outside his house. He had a little girl to think about, too, after his wife passed away. That must have been terrible, Sarah said quietly. Some folks can't tell the difference between the good guys and the bad guys when they're angry, Mr. Peterson said. But I've been looking into Jake Thompson's record myself. This town is lucky to have him. Sarah left the hardware store feeling worse than when she went in. Jake hadn't been lying about the threats and the hostile atmosphere in Cedar Falls. He really had been trying to protect Emma from an angry mob that couldn't tell the difference between the guilty and the innocent. That evening, Sarah sat on her porch steps where she and Jake had shared so many conversations. She kept thinking about what Emma had said the night before they left. Maybe we could help each other. The little girl had been right. Sarah had been lonely, and Jake and Emma had filled a void in her life she hadn't even realized existed. But more than that, Sarah was starting to think she had made a mistake. Jake had lied about who he was, but his reasons were understandable. He was a father trying to protect his child and a man trying to rebuild his life after being unfairly targeted. Wasn't that something she could forgive? Sarah spent a sleepless night wrestling with her thoughts. By morning, she had made up her mind. She was going to find Jake and apologize. Maybe they could work things out. She drove to the nicest hotel in Millbrook, figuring that's where Jake would stay while looking for a house. But the desk clerk told her no one by the name of Jake Thompson was registered. Maybe he's staying under a different name, Sarah suggested. The clerk looked confused. Ma'am, I'm not supposed to give out information about our guests. Sarah tried the two other motels in town with the same result. Jake and Emma were nowhere to be found. Panic started to set in. What if they had left Millbrook entirely? What if Jake had decided the job wasn't worth the trouble? She drove to City Hall and asked to speak to someone about the new mayor. Mayor Thompson called yesterday and said he needed a few more days to handle some personal business, the city clerk told her. But he assured us he'll be here for the swearing and ceremony next week. Is there something I can help you with? Sarah almost told the woman the whole story, but decided against it. No, I was just curious about when he'd be arriving. As she walked back to her truck, Sarah noticed a familiar vehicle parked across the street. It was Jake's pickup truck. Her heart started racing as she looked around for any sign of him or Emma. She found them at the small diner on Main Street. Jake was sitting in a corner booth with his back to the door while Emma colored in a coloring book. They both looked tired and sad. Sarah took a deep breath and walked over to their table. Jake looked up in surprise when he saw her. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" "Looking for you too," she said, sliding into the booth across from them. Emma's face lit up. "Sarah, I missed you so much." The little girl reached across the table to grab Sarah's hand. "I missed you too, sweetheart," Sarah said, squeezing Emma's fingers. Jake looked wary. "If you're here to tell me to leave town, you don't need to. We can go somewhere else." "That's not why I'm here," Sarah said. "I came to apologize?" Jake looked surprised. "You came to apologize? Sarah, I'm the one who lied to you. Yes, you did. But I've been thinking about why you lied, and I understand now. You were trying to protect Emma. You were scared of what might happen if people here reacted the same way people did in Cedar Falls. That doesn't excuse what I did. Maybe not. But it explains it, and I think I overreacted." Sarah looked at Emma, who was listening to every word. "Jake, this town needs you. From what I've heard, people are excited about having you as mayor. They want someone who will bring positive changes to Millbrook. What are you saying?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I'm saying that maybe running away isn't the answer. Maybe it's time to stop hiding and start fighting for what you want." Jake was quiet for a long moment. "And what is it you think I want?" "A fresh start. A chance to do the job you were elected to do. A safe place to raise Emma. Anything else?" Sarah felt herself blushing. "Maybe a chance to see where things could go with a certain horse rescue lady if she's willing to give you another chance." Emma clapped her hands together. "Does that mean we can come back to the ranch?" "If your daddy wants to," Sarah said, looking at Jake. "Sarah, I need you to understand something. Being with me might not be easy. If people find out about what happened in Cedar Falls, they might gossip about you too. Are you ready for that?" "Let me ask you something, Jake. Do you believe you did anything wrong in Cedar Falls?" "No, I was guilty of being naive, maybe. Of trusting the wrong people. But I never took a penny that didn't belong to me, and I never made a decision that wasn't in the best interest of the town." "Then why should you have to keep running? Why should Emma have to keep moving from place to place because other people made mistakes?" Jake looked at his daughter, who was watching him hopefully. "What do you think, sweetheart? Do you want to go back to Sarah's ranch?" "Yes," Emma said immediately. "I want to live there forever and take care of the horses and play with Whiskers." Jake smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm, then turned back to Sarah. "If we do this, we do it right. No more secrets, no more hiding. I'll tell people exactly who I am and what happened in Cedar Falls if anyone asks." "Good," Sarah said. "And I have an idea that might help." "What kind of idea?" "What if you didn't just live at the ranch temporarily? What if you made it your permanent home? You could help me expand the horse rescue operation, and it would give you a place to live that's close enough to town for your mayoral duties, but far enough away to give Emma the peaceful childhood she deserves." Jake stared at her. "Are you asking me to move in with you permanently?" "I'm asking you to consider a partnership. You need a place to stay, and I need help running the ranch. Emma loves it there, and she's good with the horses. It could work out for everyone, but what about us? I mean, what we were starting to feel for each other." Sarah reached across the table and took Jake's hand. "I'd like to see where that goes too, but let's take it one day at a time. First, let's focus on getting you settled in as mayor and making sure Emma feels safe and happy." Jake looked down at their joined hands, then back up at Sarah's face. "You're amazing, you know that?" Most people would have run in the opposite direction after finding out about my baggage. "I don't scare easily," Sarah said with a smile. "Besides, everyone has baggage. At least yours comes with an adorable little girl and a man who knows how to fix broken fence posts," Emma giggled. "Can we go home now?" I want to see Charlie and Luna and all the other horses. Jake repeated softly, as if testing how the word sounded. I like that. Jake's swearing-in ceremony took place on a sunny Tuesday morning in October. The entire town seemed to have turned out for the event, filling the small city hall meeting room to capacity. Sarah sat in the front row with Emma, who wore her best pink dress for the special occasion. I now pronounce you Mayor of Millbrook, Judge Williams said as Jake raised his right hand and repeated his oath of office. The crowd applauded, and Emma clapped loudest of all. That's my daddy, she announced proudly, making everyone laugh off of the ceremony. People came up to congratulate Jake and welcome him to Millbrook. Sarah watched as he shook hands and chatted with his new constituents. He looked confident and happy, nothing like the scared man she had found hiding in her barn just a month ago. He's going to be a wonderful mayor, said Mrs. Henderson from the flower shop. You can tell he really cares about people. Yes, he does, Sarah agreed, feeling proud of Jake. Several people asked Sarah how she knew Jake, and she simply said, they were neighbors. It wasn't exactly a lie. The ranch was technically within the city limits, making Jake and Emma her closest neighbors now. That evening they celebrated at the ranch with a special dinner. Jake cooked steaks on the grill while Sarah made salad and baked potatoes. Emma picked flowers from the garden to make a centerpiece for the table. To new beginnings, Jake said, raising his glass of iced tea in a toast. To new beginnings, Sarah and Emma echoed. Over the following weeks, Jake settled into his dual role as mayor and ranch partner. He spent his mornings handling city business and his afternoons working with the horses. Sarah was amazed at how naturally he took to both responsibilities. Emma started attending Millbrook Elementary School and made friends quickly. She loved telling her classmates about the rescue horses and often brought friends home to meet them. Sarah enjoyed having the children around and started thinking about offering riding lessons to local kids. We could start a program for children who need confidence building, she suggested to Jake one evening as they watched Emma teach her friend Lucy how to brush Luna's mane. That's a great idea, Jake said. The city might even be able to provide some funding for it. There are grants available for youth programs. This was exactly the kind of partnership Sarah had hoped for. Jake's knowledge of government and business, combined with her passion for helping animals and children, created possibilities neither of them could have achieved alone. In November, their arrangement was put to its first real test. A reporter from the Cedar Falls newspaper came to Millbrook asking questions about Jake's past. Word spread quickly through the small town, and Sarah could see people whispering and pointing when Jake walked down Main Street. Maybe I should resign, Jake said that evening, pacing around the kitchen. I don't want to bring scandal to this town. Absolutely not, Sarah said firmly. You haven't done anything wrong, and the people of Millbrook deserve to hear the truth from you, not from some gossip columnist. Emma, who was doing homework at the kitchen table, looked up with worry. Are we going to have to move again, Daddy? No, sweetheart, Sarah said before Jake could answer. We're going to stay right here and fight for what's right. Jake looked at Sarah with gratitude. What do you think I should do? Call a town meeting. Tell everyone exactly what happened in Cedar Falls. Let them decide for themselves whether they still want you as their mayor. The town meeting was held the following Friday evening. The room was packed with curious residents. Jake stood at the front, looking nervous but determined. Sarah and Emma sat in the front row for moral support. I want to be completely honest with all of you about my background, Jake began. He then told the entire story about the corruption scandal, the threats his family received, and his decision to leave Cedar Falls to protect Emma. I understand if some of you have concerns about my past, Jake concluded. I'm prepared to resign, if that's what you want. But I want you to know that I came to Millbrook hoping to serve this community with integrity and dedication. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Mr. Peterson from the hardware store stood up. I've been looking into this situation since you arrived, Mayor Thompson, he said. I called people in Cedar Falls who know you. Every single person told me you're an honest man who got caught up in someone else's mess. As far as I'm concerned, their loss is our gain." Other people began standing up to voice their support. Mrs. Henderson talked about how Jake had already helped bring 2 new businesses to Main Street. The fire chief mentioned Jake's efforts to get funding for new equipment. The librarian praised his proposal for after-school programs. "I move that we hold a vote of confidence for Mayor Thompson," called out Tom Miller, who owned the local garage. "I second that motion," said several people at once. The vote was overwhelmingly in Jake's favor. Only 3 people voted against him, and 2 of those later admitted they didn't really understand what they were voting about. After the meeting, people came up to shake Jake's hand and welcome him officially to the community. Sarah felt tears of relief and pride watching Jake receive the support he deserved. "Thank you," Jake whispered to her as they walked to the truck. "I couldn't have done this without you." "Yes, you could have," Sarah replied. "But I'm glad you didn't have to." Winter brought new challenges and new joys. Emma's first Christmas at the ranch was magical. She helped Sarah decorate the barn for a holiday party, and they invited all the families whose children participated in the writing program. Jake dressed up as Santa Claus and handed out gifts to the kids. "This is the best Christmas ever," Emma told Sarah as they watched the children play in the snow. "It really is," Sarah agreed. By spring, the horse rescue had expanded to include 20 animals. Jake had secured grants from the state and federal government, and local businesses had donated money and supplies. Sarah hired 2 part-time helpers, and the writing program was serving 30 children. Jake was thriving as mayor, too. He had convinced a small manufacturing company to relocate to Millbrook, bringing 50 new jobs to the area. He started a farmers market in the town square and organized festivals that brought visitors from neighboring communities. "You're making this place feel alive again," said Judge Williams, who had sworn Jake into office. "We haven't seen this much excitement in Millbrook for 20 years. One evening in May, as they sat on the porch watching Emma play with a litter of barn kittens, Jake turned to Sarah with a serious expression. "I need to ask you something important," he said. Sarah's heart started beating faster. Over the past months, she and Jake had grown closer, but they had been taking their relationship slowly for Emma's sake. "What is it?" she asked. Jake got down on one knee beside her chair and pulled out a small velvet box. "Sarah Martinez, you saved my life and my daughter's life. You gave us a home when we had nowhere to go. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Will you marry me?" Sarah looked at the ring, then at Jake's hopeful face, then at Emma, who had stopped playing with the kittens and was watching them with excitement. "Did you know about this?" Sarah asked Emma. "Daddy asked if I wanted you to be my new mommy," Emma said, grinning. "I said yes because I love you and you love us and we're already like a family anyway." Sarah laughed through her tears. "Well, if Emma approves, how could I say no? Is that a yes?" Jake asked. "It's definitely a yes," Sarah said. Jake slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her while Emma cheered and clapped. They were married 6 months later in a ceremony held right there on the ranch. The entire town came to celebrate, along with friends from other places who had heard their story. Emma served as maid of honor, and Charlie, Sarah's favorite horse, wore flowers in his mane for the occasion. 2 years ago, I thought my life was over," Jake said in his wedding speech. "I was wrong. It was just beginning. Sarah didn't just give me and Emma a place to live. She gave us a reason to believe in love and family and second chances." Sarah wiped away tears as she looked out at all the people who had become their extended family. The ranch hands, the city council members, the children from the writing program, the neighbors who had accepted them completely. They had all become part of this beautiful, messy, wonderful life they had built together. "I used to think rescue was just about saving animals," Sarah said in her own speech. "But I learned that sometimes the rescuer needs rescuing too." Jake and Emma didn't just find shelter in my barn that stormy night. They found their way into my heart, and I found my way into theirs. 5 years later, Jake was re-elected mayor by the largest margin in Millbrook's history. The horse rescue had become famous throughout the state, and people came from hundreds of miles away to adopt animals and participate in programs. Emma, now 11, was an accomplished rider who helped train the younger children. Sarah and Jake had added to their family with a son named Miguel, who toddled around the ranch getting into everything. Emma was a devoted big sister who read him stories about horses every night. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't found you in the barn that night? Sarah asked Jake as they sat on the porch watching their children play. I try not to think about it, Jake said, pulling her closer. But I know we would have found each other somehow. Some things are just meant to be. Sarah smiled and leaned against his shoulder.